You and I had this on the books for a while, and you always come up with great topics. But today, we struck a chord with this article that I actually posted earlier in the week, and I wrote most of this years ago, and it's been one of these things where I always just try to get grounded on these, kind of these fundamentals, and I called it the 10 keys to exceeding expectations and achieving results. And lo and behold, and not surprising to me at all, this was something that you reached out and you're like, hey, I've done shows on multiple of these topics before, so really excited to dive in, especially with we were talking in the green room before jumping in about number one, and the attitude and determination. So attitude and determination, number one. Number two, clearly defined goals with a realistic approach. Number three, preparation. Number four, patience. Number five, be adaptable and open to change and tweaks to your process. Number six, perseverance. Number seven, build relationships that are symbiotic and mutually beneficial. Number eight, make the conscious decision every day and at every leg in the race to continue, to keep executing. Number nine, the ability to take most things as they come, be present, be mindful, be in the moment. And number 10, a continued quest for growth, constant learning. So we want to start with number one, and you've got an amazing story here, but it's around the attitude and determination that will carry you through any obstacle.
Well, Carson, first of all, as always, thanks for letting me even pontificate on some of the things that we have bantered back and forth on. But I do a seminar on this attitude and your attitude indicator. Most people do not realize that small plane pilots, they can get their pilot's license and fly around. They call them fair weather pilots. But to get your instrument rating so that you can fly at night or in storms, I think back on John F. Kennedy Jr. He was flying into the night and a storm, and he wasn't instrument rated. There is a indicator on an airplane. There's the altitude indicator, but there's also this thing called the attitude indicator, which is fascinating to me because that attitude indicator keeps the plane level with the horizon when you can't see the horizon or you're flying into a storm. Well, I could stop right there because it relates to our own attitude indicator. You may be spiraling out of control and headed towards the ocean or towards the ground if you don't have your attitude in check or your own internal attitude indicator clicking on all cylinders. That's why I love that very first thing you talk about, the attitude being so important, that determination to carry you through and over obstacles, because all of us have that instrument rating that we can have in our own selves.
There's a lot of times, Richard, where I think people, they accept defeat or, almost will the loss into existence because they are negative or pessimistic, or perhaps they had a poor experience before, or things didn't go as planned and intended. I always go back to Napoleon Hill. And in Think and Grow Rich, the gist of kind of my favorite message from that book, and there are many, is that the people who succeed after the point by which most people would have given up. And if you have that attitude and determination, you can will yourself forward and will yourself to a win. And here's the thing, success finds you after you continue to, there are losses along the way. There are challenges and roadblocks, but the difference between people that exceed expectations and those who don't is what you do when those obstacles hit your way. What happens when you fall down and lose? Because you take this mentality of, I'm going to get up better and I'm going to go forward with this knowledge and this experience. And with that experience comes confidence. And ultimately, that is what will carry you forward. Now, I want to dive into with you on number two, clearly defined goals with a realistic approach. There's a lot of schools of thought to this one. A lot of people will say, write down your goals. I write down daily non-negotiables that I want to go after because that's very important to me. These are the things that before I get sucked into the minutia of email and all the instant messages, these are the things that I have to get done today to define today as a success. How often do we look back on a day and it's like, my gosh, where did this day go? I got sucked into all these fire drills and games of hot potato, and it happens to us all. But those who rise above and exceed expectations are the ones that have those clearly defined goals and they just get it done.
Yeah, and I appreciate your thoughts on goals because I think you have probably the best and most well-rounded thought process around it because there's these dream boards and wish boards that people have up in their rooms and their offices, which, kudos to you, do that. But the problem with those things is they're a wish and a hope and a prayer. And that never actually gets you to where you want to go. If you do not have that set out with minute steps along the way and intricate details of how each of those steps are going to be accomplished, those goals are they're just going to be on that wish board forever. That mansion, that Maserati, that vacation, whatever you have on your wish board, unless you have clearly defined, laid out steps, it'll just be pictures on a board.
Totally true. Put them somewhere. And, I always think about this, and this rolls into number three, which is preparation. I always like to say, before you can feast, you got to set the table. And the reality is, Richard, really thinking about, okay, if I'm looking at my year, I'm looking at my 2024. What are the big things that I need to do or want to do this year? I want to finish a book. I want to travel with my family. I want to take some time off and go to Florida for a couple weeks, right? I want to crush my number. I want to win the biggest award in the company. There's got to be intentionality to these things, and with that comes preparation. Do I have the tools necessary to reach these goals? Do I have the relationships that I'm going to need in order to get the big deals done or do the internal selling that I need to do? Those are the types of things that you've got to map out because there is an intentionality to that. Now, I will tell you, some of the learning that I've had around preparation has been I've been doing this a long time, and it's been because I got nipped in the bud by something along the way. There was some mystery second legal review that a customer had to do, or there was a
Oh.
threshold that I didn't know about that had to go to the board for a deal review, or somebody else had a better year than I did and they won the award and I didn't. But the bottom line is you want to do the prep work so that you're going out and you're leaving it all on the field. You're turning over every stone on the path to success so that at the end of that quarter, that year, that whatever it is, you look back and you say, I did all I could. I controlled the controllables and I did what I could. But you can't do that without prepping, mapping out your year, mapping to these clearly defined goals, and doing the foundational work.
And Carson, that leads to your number 4, which I think is absolutely perfect, that patience, because you have to give yourself grace. There are days and times where, man, let's drive, we're pushing, we're going. But when certain things do not happen or lay into place or fall into place, a little bit of hard work and luck, and all of a sudden you're like, those goals, it can't just happen overnight. So we have to be patient with the entire process. I tell people at mid-year reviews and end of the year reviews, I'm not looking at judging you at a snapshot in time. I try to look at human beings. I try to look at their trajectory. Where is their trajectory on that line graph going? Now, just like the stock market, you may have some downturns and you may have some upturns, but the overall 10-year trajectory looks pretty good. So give yourself patience.
That is so powerful because I often realize, sometimes I'm one of those folks that there's a line in Top Gun where Charlie says to Maverick, you wouldn't be, you wouldn't be you without your hair on fire going Mach 2. And it's, sometimes it's challenging, especially for people who exceed expectations to be patient. We want it all. We want it now, as Queen used to say, right? So I think the key element is, knowing how to pace yourself, keep that steady hand on the wheel, being consistent. I've had multiple promotions that I didn't get. And I've learned a lot from these situations. The last thing you want to do is allow yourself to stand still and let somebody else pass you. You always want to be in the game. You always want to be on the radars. And that does take a lot of patience because things don't happen on your timetable. You're not the center of the universe. And I think that's the key is how can I continue to put good out there? And I believe strongly with all of my heart that if I keep putting good out there, good will happen. And it does. And I think that's the key element. I've got everything I've ever wanted, from relationships and from my career. And I know that there's great things still ahead. But right now, I'm in no hurry. Just enjoy, be mindful in that moment. And then rolling into number 5, being adaptable and open to changing and making tweaks to your process. I tell people that I coach and mentor all the time that it's very likely that, first off, you need to be coachable. I realized very mid-level in my career that I needed to be a lot more open to coaching. I was one of those people in my 20s. I got promoted multiple times very, very fast. I didn't have a lot of coaches or mentoring. And I had this air of confidence because I had had a lot of success. It wasn't until later that I realized the importance of being really open to where the additional learning would be or to lean into challenging situations as opposed to just riding high on things that I thought I was good at. It's amazing too. And you and I always talk about what we're reading and what we're diving into. How are we mastering our craft? And those are the types of things that people who exceed expectations, they are always looking to master their craft, make their process better, and invest in better relationships.
Yeah, that adaptability in your company, in my company, companies all across the world, we love acronyms, right? So we've got an acronym for everything. My acronym for adaptability is the word FAT, not PHAT, but FAT, FAT. If you can be faithful, available, and teachable, if you can be fat and be there to be faithful and show up, available when those opportunities come, but most importantly, teachable, that's when that adaptability really starts playing into your favor. And you mentioned perseverance as number 6, and probably the most strong area that those winner boards, you see the top 10 winner boards on different awards on LinkedIn, people who get awards year after year after year, they have that process built in so that they can persevere every year. The reason why you're successful, Carson, I believe in what you do, because you have a perseverance, you have a tenacity of putting out this content for free to people, and then you'll write a book or do a seminar or show up and be a special guest somewhere, and that's the payoff on the backside. But really, for you, it's about that perseverance. For me, it's about staying ahead of the game, staying relevant. And those are the kind of things that really separate the winners from the average or mediocre achievers.
I love that so much. And I can see a future tweet now or article title, Get Fat in 2024. That's going to be my new goal, get fat. You're talking about perseverance. When I think about perseverance, I love inspirational content, music, movies, TV, etc. Rocky 1. When he's in the ring against Apollo Creed and RIP Carl Weathers,
Yeah, for
um,
sure.
there's this scene at the end of the 14th round where, it's like they're like, what is keeping this guy up, right? And like Rocky, all he wanted to do was go the distance. He was a nobody, club fighter in Philadelphia. And he gets this ridiculous 1 in a million chance to fight the heavyweight champion of the world because somebody went down right before the fight and they needed it to be in Philly on that certain day. And so, Rocky winds up in this situation and he knows like his life has not gone the way he's wanted it to, but he just wants to go the distance with the champ. And in the 14th round, he goes down, and even his trainer is saying, stay down. And he pulls himself up. Like Apollo's over here celebrating because it's over in his mind. And Rocky like pulls himself up with every ounce of strength he's got, hits Apollo a couple times in the ribs, hangs on, and ultimately ends up staying, going the distance, going all 15 rounds, like unbelievable. And when I feel like I'm getting smashed by life, by the gnarliness that sales can sometimes be, the ups and downs, we all get pummeled. But what do you do when you get pummeled? If you find a way to stay in the fight, or when you find these situations where somebody's like, there's no way you're going to win this deal, or there's no way you're going to get this customer to do X, Y, Z, or there's no way you can go get this funding money for this project. I find a way every time. And people who exceed expectations find a way. When they get the obstacle or they hear no, that's when they get activated. And I think the other piece of this, enrolling into number 7, building relationships that are symbiotic and mutually beneficial. The key thing is so many people are going after the metrics. They're going after the deals. They're going after these accolades or these advancements in their own journey and in their own career. But the best way, I like to kind of parlay this into servant leadership. The best way that you can propel yourself forward is figure out what you're great at and what you love and use it to make everybody around you better. I realized a long time ago, I work at a tech company. I'm not overly technically savvy. I used to listen to people talk and think they were talking another language. I'd take a lot of notes. And finally, several months in, I finally started to understand what they were saying. And that made me feel a little bit better. But what I've done is I've gone out and created customer relationships that are mutually beneficial. My value that I can bring to them often is to demystify the investment that maybe they're already making, or to demystify resources that I can bring to bear. I also spend a lot of time doing internal selling. Internal selling is one of the most important components of sales, and we don't ever really talk about it. Knowing these people internally that could move mountains in a relationship that I have, I'm the least important person in the room. I just need to put these people together. But I've got to convince this important internal resource to be a part of this deal. So I got to know what they care about. I got to know what makes them tick. I've got to do them favors sometimes. I've got to put a spotlight on them and illuminate their work and promote what they're doing and invest in those relationships. And I love doing that because guess what? I learn as a result and as a byproduct. But finding these relationships that you can create that are mutually beneficial, I've even gone so far as to introduce customers to competitors because I couldn't take care of them. But I knew that if I consistently did that, that if they came across a scenario that they couldn't help, they would kick that my way. And they have. So my point is keep investing in relationships. Go out and do everything you can to earn that right to be a trusted advisor to these folks. That will pay off in spades.
I tell my daughter, who's going into the nursing field and studying to become a nurse, that even in nursing or whatever field, you're in a tech field, you are still in sales. And if you do not realize that you have to learn to sell yourself and making that decision to make yourself available and sell yourself to other people, you will fail if you don't realize that everything in this world is still sales. Whether you're listening to this podcast today with Carson and I, you may not be in sales, but trust me when I say you are. And Carson, you said something about number 8, making a conscious decision every day and at every leg of the race to continue. And that's one of the things that I admire about you and others, both in a lot of different businesses, the people who adapt and the people who continue to grow and adopt new selling techniques or continuously reading and continuously controlling different details and things in their life to make themselves and set themselves up for success. We want to win because we won before and we liked how it felt. I love what Steve Harvey says. He says, once you sit in first class on an airplane, it is hard for you to walk past the first class and sit back there in the other seats ever again because you knew how it felt. You got different food, you got different drinks, and you got different service, and you were only 6 feet away from the bathroom, Carson. So it's pretty cool sitting in first class. So once you feel how that feels, you want to get back there again.
Ah, that's powerful. I call number 8 land the step. You've got to make a conscious decision. And I think sometimes fear holds us back, or we start to think too far ahead, or we dwell on what's behind, and we're almost afraid to take that next step forward. It reminds me of this trip that I took a few years back to Seattle, and a couple weeks backpacking with my father-in-law and my brother-in-law in Rainier and the Cascades. And that's not my element. Like, I hike, but I mean, we were going up mountains and crossing glaciers and all kinds of crazy stuff. At one point, there was this ravine that I literally had to dive across and grab onto some vegetation just to stop from sliding down. Like, I mean, I was terrified at times, right? I felt like Indiana Jones. And but what's amazing to me, Richard, I would look up and I'd be like, "You're kidding me! I have to go all the way up there." But I realized if I could just land the step right in front of me, eventually I would get there and I'd look back and I'd be like, wow, look at all this way that I came. And I think that's the key element, is that when we pause in our journey, no matter how anxious I might feel or no matter how stressed I might feel, if I look back, I've got a body of work that I'm proud of. And I think that's the key, is land the step that's in front of you. It's very likely that you know what it is. You know what you need to do next. Do it. And that's the key element. You have a lot of control over your direction. The investments that you make in people and in relationships and in your own learning and in mastery of your craft, you have those abilities. And that rolls into number 9, which is the ability to take most things as they come and as they need to be dealt with. I'm doing a lot of reading these days, and I've got multiple books going at once, and one of the ones that I'm reading right now is Solve for Happy by Mo Gaudat. And he's ex Amazon, ex Microsoft, and his son passed away. And within 2 weeks, he started writing this book, and it was really about, he has an engineering background, and he in essence uses that to create a formula for happiness. And he's just suffered what anyone would deem probably the greatest loss possible. And what's fascinating about it is just how much time he spends on being in the moment, being present. Yes, you do want to plan as if there could be things that go awry based on your experiences. You want to be able to see effectively around corners, and especially as leaders, you want to help your team see around corners based on your experience. But sometimes you've got to shut that off, and you've got to take things as they happen. Don't react out of emotion.
Mm.
Decipher what the next best step is going to be. Recalibrate. Return to your foundation and your process after addressing those bumps in the road. Don't let doubts during downward times make you do something that's uncharacteristic, because if you can stay the course, the storm will end.
Such sage advice and wisdom, Carson. And if I can, number 10 is probably the reason why you and I have become fast friends over the internet, over Zoom calls, over Teams calls, and really over LinkedIn, is because I saw in you a continued quest for growth, and I saw some of the similar things. There was so much symbiotic learnings that you were teaching that I was like, man, I need to reach out to this guy. And our friendship developed out of that continued quest for growth. And I just want to tell you, Carson, thanks for challenging not only me, but hundreds of thousands of people in your company and my company. I saw you coaching somebody from my company on LinkedIn the other day, and they knew you as a result of their relationship with me. And that, my dear friend, is how we do what we do.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, I heard an illustration a long time ago that there's a reason why rivers never have a lot of moss. They never have a lot of scum on top of the waters, because they're rippling and they're going down and they're changing locations. But a pond will grow all kinds of lily pads and have all kinds of stuff floating on the top, because it's it's stagnant. There's no fresh water getting to that pond. And that's what I see as a continued quest for growth, and being that river that continually finds new paths and new places to go. And thank you for being that in my life and challenging me and encouraging me.
Yeah. Now, Richard, you're too kind as usual. I feel the same for you. And I think where we are kindred spirits is that the journey's never done. The blessing is the journey, and there's so many opportunities to continue to take on new things and turn that canvas that was once blank into a masterpiece. And sometimes it happens by brushstrokes. I think this one brings us full circle because it harks back to the prep and the patience. It harks back to the foundation building. And you said something earlier that really resonated with me about the trajectory, right? Being realistic about the trajectory. These things don't happen overnight, but you deem what is important, whether it's your mastery of something, key relationships, and you invest in those very intentionally. And over time, that is what is going to bear fruit. That's what takes this little snowball and eventually turns it into an avalanche. And you can look at all of the things that, it's amazing where, I feel at this stage in my career, I've had times in my life and in my career where I felt like, things happened that could have gone very differently, right? They could have gone even more poorly. I've lost jobs through no fault of my own. I've had some crushing, debilitating losses. But the reality is, in those moments, sometimes has beget the greatest experiences, like writing a book out of a layoff, or managing to join another organization out of another layoff, and becoming where I got to today, or my worst year ever in my career, actually begetting a completely new path for me that has been has borne a lot of fruit. So I always appreciate our chats. Thank you for indulging me and just diving into these 10. I've learned a ton from you today, as I always do, and can't wait till we do it again.
Carson, until next time, thanks.
Thank you, my friend. Talk soon.